They came without a warning because they thought they didn't need one. The sky tore open at dawn. First came the black thunderclouds, unnatural and silent. Then the ships emerged, vast and jagged, like blades slicing through heaven itself. They didn't cloak. They didn't hide. They didn't care. The Varn Dominion had arrived. To them, Earth was nothing more than another unclaimed territory, primitive, divided, disorganized. A footnote in the Galactic Registry. Humanity hadn't made first contact because humanity wasn't worth contacting. So the Varn came to conquer. They didn't speak. They didn't demand surrender. They simply descended. In the Appalachian foothills, a small town watched the sky grow darker and darker until day felt like night. Old radios buzzed, phones died, the power blinked out, and still no one moved. No one screamed. They just watched. Then the first strike hit New Delhi, a beam from orbit, clean and white. It didn't explode. It erased. Skyscrapers, streets, people, gone. A circular scar of glass miles wide. 10 million souls, silent in a second. And still, Earth didn't retaliate. The Varn High Marshal Threx called it a mercy campaign, a clean operation. They would be done in days. By the second day, 60 cities were gone. Military bases flash vaporized. Satellites blinded. Communications fragmented. But something bothered Threx. There was no resistance, no coordination. Just isolated panic. Then something strange happened. The Varn's 12th Advance Unit, tasked with securing rural North America, made landfall outside a forested stretch of southern Kentucky. 36 Varn commandos, elite, fully armored, armed, with hive-tech pulse weapons and terrain-adaptive suits, veterans of the Ashkar Rebellion. They marched into the woods and never came back. No comms, no biosignals, no black box data. Gone. Threx sent a drone. It transmitted 2 seconds of video, a blur of movement, a shadow in the trees, a red slash of blood, then static. Threx frowned. Equipment failure, he muttered. Nothing else. He sent another squad. 50 this time. Accompanied by an armored crawler. Same result. Radio silence. Drone footage lost. Panic did not come easily to the Varn. They were conquerors. They erased empires. But now they were hesitating. The third day brought a shift, not in strength, but in pattern. In the outskirts of Oregon, an alien patrol found a Varn soldier hanging upside down from a tree, gutted, armor stripped. A message carved into his chest, in English. This is our world. Go home. Across the Rocky Mountains, another unit stepped into a village that hadn't been abandoned. It had been rigged. Every house filled with explosives, hand-built traps, fragmentation charges made from fertilizer and scavenged Varn ammo. A veteran. Sergeant triggered the failsafe. The explosion flattened 12 blocks. No human bodies were recovered, just boots. Footprints leading into the hills. By now, the Varn expected resistance. What they didn't expect was strategy, coordination without a center, attacks without a face. Threx ordered surveillance swarms deployed across the North American interior. They mapped thousands of square miles, and in those miles they saw something worse than armies. They saw camps. Refugees training with salvaged weapons, ex-military instructors teaching teenagers how to ambush in urban terrain. Retired engineers reverse engineering downed Varn tech. Humans weren't just surviving. They were preparing, and they'd let the Varn land. In an underground bunker beneath a burned-out church in Tennessee, a former Navy SEAL named Carter Reeves watched the satellite feed flicker to life. Varn positioning grids, ship layouts, command signals. All hijacked. He leaned back, cigarette dangling from his lip. They think we're uncoordinated, he muttered to the others. We're not. We're decentralized. Someone laughed. Another cleaned a rifle. Outside, children were learning. To field-strip alien rifles by feel, blindfolded, Carter crushed the cigarette beneath his boot. "Let 'em keep coming," he said. "We're not fighting for control. We're fighting for the dirt under our feet. They'll choke on it before they take it." 50 elite soldiers vanished in the woods. No gunfire, no alarms, only silence, the kind that listens back. Rain fell in sheets across the Appalachian foothills. Thick fog clung to the ground, swallowing the boots of the Varn troopers as they moved. Deeper into the forest, their pulse rifles hissed with quiet energy. Bioscanners swept in wide arcs, chirping with false positives, rabbits, birds, heat anomalies. All harmless, or so they thought. Threx paced the command platform aboard the Varn field cruiser Unbreakable Law, watching 6 surveillance drones glide silently above the treetops, their multispectral feeds blinking across the central screen. His second-in-command, Jarnock, hovered behind him. "No signs of engagement," Jarnock growled. "Primitive tactics, likely fear-based retreats. It's their nature." Threx narrowed his eyes. "Fear doesn't leave blood messages carved into our dead." Below, in the woods, Squad Echelon 3 advanced through the gloom. Every movement felt watched. Sergeant Keltra adjusted his visor, peering through thermal overlays. For a moment, nothing. Then, just for a flash, movement. Low to the ground. Fast, unnaturally fast. He spun. "Hold formation!" The squad's comms cut off mid-breath. Drone 5 caught it. A shadow fell from the trees, not falling, launching. A cloaked figure slammed into a Varn soldier, driving a serrated blade into his neck joint. Another figure rose. From the underbrush, striking 2 more, then 3, then chaos. No gunfire from the humans. Just speed. Precision. Disappearance. One drone feed tilted violently before freezing. Its last frame, a human in mud-caked armor, war paint smeared across his face, eyes like flint. Later, the only recovered footage from Echelon 3 showed a soldier dragged screaming into a sinkhole laced with tripwires and jagged steel. Another crushed beneath a fallen tree rigged with explosives. Threx stared at the footage, frozen in disbelief. "They're not panicked," he said slowly. "They're planning." Jarnock didn't respond. "They know our movement schedules. They know our routes." "How?" Threx gestured to a comms tech. "Send a full scan sweep. I want these forests purged. Burn them down if we have to." Meanwhile, in a hidden valley 6 miles from the engagement zone, an old coal mine had been converted into a guerrilla command post. Inside, generator-powered monitors flickered to life, displaying intercepted Varn frequencies. Carter Reeves, grizzled, sleepless, watched silently as heat signatures lit up the screen. "They're blind now," said Mara, his second. "We jammed their long-range recon. They'll be relying on foot patrols." Carter cracked his neck. "Good. Let 'em walk right into it." Behind them, a teenage girl in a scavenged flak vest adjusted a jury-rigged proximity bomb. She couldn't have been older than 15, but her hands didn't shake. Nearby, a group of farmers-turned-snipers loaded alien crystal rounds into bolt-action rifles. "We've bled them in the dark," Carter said. "Let's see how they like bleeding in the rain." Back in orbit, Threx's rage grew. 5 more. Patrols had vanished. Drones captured fragments of sound, not screams, but whispers. Human voices, calm, coordinated, relaying enemy positions. This wasn't desperation, this was doctrine. They have no central command. How are they coordinating? Threx stared at the map of Earth, dotted with ghost movements, appearing, disappearing, taunting him. Then, the whispers reached his comms. Not intercepted, injected. One word, repeated over every Varn channel. "Run." Threx's claws curled into fists. "They're toying with us," Jarnock whispered. "No," Threx replied. "They're hunting." Final visuals. A Varn gunship flying low, then exploding mid-air from a hidden heat-guided missile buried in a grain silo. Humans walking barefoot through the mud, faces covered in camo, carrying Varn rifles slung across, their backs like trophies. A wounded alien crawling through the dark, hearing a twig snap, then a quiet click of a homemade mine. The Varn weren't losing battles. They weren't even fighting them. They were being erased, one patrol at a time, one scream at a time, and Earth still hadn't shown its teeth. Threx stood in front of the tactical holomap, eyes burning with something. His species didn't have a word for. Not yet. Pins of red scattered across Earth's surface marked missing units. Blue pins marked contact losses. Whole swaths of the map. Gray. Gray meant unknown. "Status?" he barked. A comms officer clicked, his mandibles nervously. 8 more units lost. 1 recorded screams before signal dropped. We believe they were buried alive. Impossible. Threx growled, but he knew it wasn't. In the charred remains of a Georgia town, a Varn squad moved cautiously through debris. Buildings gutted, roads torn apart. Alien scanners flickered as electromagnetic static scrambled their feeds, and then music. Soft, old, a human radio, crackling from somewhere inside a collapsed church. A hymn. Peaceful, beautiful, out of place. The squad leader raised a hand to halt. He scanned the area. Too late. 1 step forward triggered a chain. The street buckled, and the squad was gone in fire, shrapnel, and molten steel, a minefield disguised as rubble, constructed from repurposed Varn grenades and Earth's own munitions. High above, a drone captured the last frame, a human silhouette standing on the church roof, one hand pressed to a detonator. Then smoke. Back in the coal mine bunker, Carter, Reeves studied a crumpled map smeared with Varn blood. "They're finally starting to panic," he muttered. "They're hesitating at every step. They don't get it yet." Mara raised an eyebrow. "Get what?" "That this isn't a rebellion," Carter said. "It's a ghost war." He walked past rows of screens, each monitored by a different resistance. Cell, underground networks in deserts, frozen hills, jungles. No central command, just signals, shared data, shared tactics. Every corner of the world was becoming a kill zone, not because of tech, not because of numbers, because of memory, guerrilla warfare, ambush doctrine, psychological operations. Humanity hadn't needed to invent new war. They just had to remember it. Aboard the Unbreakable Law, Threx finally received footage from a lone Varn who had survived a skirmish in the Louisiana swamps. The soldier's armor was shredded, one arm missing. His eyes, wild. "They don't attack like armies," he said, voice cracking. "They don't move like soldiers. They're everywhere and nowhere. They wear our dead's armor. They speak in our comms. They laugh at us." Threx leaned closer. The soldier's last words were a whisper. "They're not fighting back. They're hunting us." That same night, in a frost-bitten ridge of Montana, 3 Varn were cornered in a ravine. Traps lined the rocks, flashbangs popped from under the snow. Gunfire echoed in short, controlled bursts, not from military rifles, from old ones, civilian rifles, lever actions, bolt actions, all deadly when used with intent. One of the Varn stumbled over a body, another Varn. Skinned, booby-trapped, and carved into the ice beside him with human hands. This is what you call prey? Then the killing began again. Visuals. Varn soldiers screaming into empty woods as lights flicker and vanish. Old men teaching teenagers how to calibrate sniper scopes using the moon. A farmhouse, seemingly abandoned, lit up in flames, drawing attention, while a kill team flanks from the forest. A lone Varn war beast found dead, its cybernetic skull caved in by a human sledgehammer. Back aboard the Varn command ship, Jarnock whispered, "We should retreat. Regroup, wait for reinforcements. Threx didn't answer. He looked at Earth's surface, now crawling with static. No patterns, no formations, just scattered deaths. But something about it chilled him, because it was a pattern, just not one made for alien minds. They thought the skies made them gods, untouchable, watching from above. But Earth isn't kind to the arrogant, and gravity always brings the dead back down. It started with one ship, a Varn recon cruiser, model VXR-12, drifting silently above the eastern seaboard. Its hull shimmered with cloaking film, invisible to all known detection arrays. Inside, it housed a crew of 28 and a sensor suite capable of mapping entire continents in minutes. Then it burst into flame. Without warning, the AI ship lurched violently, internal lights flickering. Systems failed. Control panels sparked. One pilot screamed as the floor beneath him melted, not from plasma but from inside the reactor. And then it dropped. Tumbling from orbit, burning like a comet, the VXR-12 struck the Atlantic with a scream that split the sky. Civilians from New York to Lisbon watched the fireball tear through the atmosphere. No one cheered. They just watched. Because they knew it wasn't the last. High above, Threx stared in disbelief at the footage. The Varn Dominion's orbital superiority, once absolute, was beginning to crack. "Explain it," he snarled. A technician stammered. The ship's fusion stabilizers were sabotaged. Internal systems rewired. They used our own update stream to inject code. Impossible. "No, sir," the tech said quietly. "They've adapted our language, our architecture. They're inside our fleet." Silence. Then Threx leaned forward. "Find where they got the code." He didn't expect the answer. From one of our own downed ships, recovered by humans. In an abandoned naval base beneath the Alaskan permafrost, a team of rogue engineers, hackers, and scavenged AI worked by the glow of jury-rigged monitors. Their leader, a wiry woman named Aline Park, stood before a rotating schematic of a Varn. "Fusion core! Boom!" she whispered, tracing a line across the display. "Right here. One line of code, and it cooks itself from the inside out." One of her teenage apprentices blinked. "How did you even figure this out?" Elaine grinned. "Turns out Varn don't encrypt their diagnostics. Arrogance makes sloppy architecture." A cheer rippled through the freezing bunker as the second Varn frigate exploded mid-descent, breaking apart into 3 flaming chunks. The sky bled again. Within days, 5 more ships dropped from orbit. 2 in flames, 1 simply vanished from radar. Varn reinforcements were delayed, navigation systems scrambled. Earth's satellite grid had been hijacked, retooled, and made into a mirror, blinding the Dominion from above. From the jungle canopies of Brazil to the rooftops of Tokyo, humans looked up and saw the first true cracks in the Varn's armor. The gods were bleeding. In a Mississippi marshland, Carter Reeves stood beside a downed Varn escape pod, still smoldering. The pilot inside, barely alive, rasped through a translator. "This planet is poison." Carter crouched, dragging the alien from the wreckage. "No," he said calmly. "This planet just doesn't like invaders." He pulled a flare from his belt, ignited it, and walked away. Behind him, the pod went up in light. Visuals, human-built launchers firing scavenged plasma torpedoes into orbit, leaving trails of blue fire through the clouds. Saboteurs in zero-G hacking into Varn data cores with makeshift gloves and duct-tape translators. Kids in slums watching the sky light up, quiet, stunned, as another alien warship burns. A new moon crater forming where a Varn command cruiser slammed into the lunar surface. In orbit, the unbreakable. Law shook with turbulence. Threx slammed a fist into the console as more red warnings blinked across the screen. They were supposed to be animals, he roared. They were supposed to run. No, Commander, Jarnock said quietly. They waited. They watched. Now, they strike. Threx stared at the earth below. For the first time, his hands trembled. They came to conquer, then they asked for a ceasefire, and that's when they made their worst mistake. They thought we'd accept it. They didn't understand what they'd started. The Varn Dominion called for peace on the 22nd day of the invasion. Not because they were losing numbers. They were. Not because their fleets were burning. They were. But because for the first time in their empire's blood-stained history, they were afraid. A small diplomatic pod was dropped into the Mojave Desert, a pristine white capsule, unarmed, a symbol of mercy. It broadcast across all human frequencies in multiple languages, laced with synthesized empathy. We regret the aggression. We propose terms. Let us negotiate. They even dropped supplies, rations, medkits, fuel cells. Some humans approached, others watched. One group in the New Mexico Badlands didn't hesitate. They strapped explosives to the pod, detonated it mid-transmission, and scrawled a message into the sand with alien bones. We don't negotiate with monsters. On the Eastern Front, Carter Reeves read the Varn broadcast with a blank face. His crew of freedom fighters, farmers, veterans, teenagers, waited in silence. Mara finally asked, "Should we hear them out?" Carter looked up slowly. They dropped buildings on our cities, burned schools, melted children in their beds. You think a speech fixes that? He stood, checked his rifle. They're not here to make peace, they're buying time. And Carter was right. High in orbit, aboard the crippled unbreakable law, Threx paced furiously. Have the humans responded? He demanded. Yes, Jarnock replied grimly. With explosives and body parts. Threx's claws tightened. Of course they did, but no matter. It's a distraction. We need time to reroute supply ships through safer quadrants. The longer they hunt us, the better chance we have of... An explosion rocked the ship mid-sentence. Klaxons blared. Reactor breach on Deck 6. Human boarding team confirmed. What? The Varn didn't know it yet, but Earth had stolen. A working stealth shuttle, and they were bringing the war into the stars. On Earth. Retaliation came fast and without mercy. In Cairo, a Varn command node was hacked by a team of human teens using cobbled-together alien consoles and a modified gaming rig. In Detroit, ex-gang members trained to use repurposed Varn weaponry were now blowing up armored crawlers in coordinated street ambushes. In the Canadian North, indigenous trackers led guerrilla units through frozen terrain to stalk Varn soldiers like wolves in a long hunt. Everywhere, the message spread like wildfire. No peace, not until the last invader was ashes. Visuals. A Varn peace envoy burned alive by civilians in a refugee camp, their screams echoing under the stars. Human flags, torn, blackened, blood-marked, planted in the wreckage of alien tech. Urban ruins filled with children carrying rifles too large for them. But steady hands. A hacked alien loudspeaker blaring Frank Sinatra's My Way as a Varn base is swallowed in fire. On the streets of what used to be San Francisco, Threx himself descended to rally his remaining troops. His once golden armor was scorched black. His honor guard reduced to a dozen. He stepped through the ashes of his own making, saw the murals painted on walls. Remember Atlanta. No forgiveness. We don't stop. He looked up at the crumbling skyline, and for the first time, he felt something alien. Doubt. Back in the Colorado resistance bunker, Mara turned to Carter, voice low. They're breaking. We could offer them an exit. Carter loaded one final round. No, he said. Why? He stared at the darkened map, dotted in red. Because they'd come back. Or someone like them. Unless we finish it. He looked around the room, teenagers stitching uniforms, old soldiers reloading alien rifles, every face marked by scars and fire. "We don't stop," Carter said. "Not now, not ever." They thought Earth was the battlefield. They thought they'd fight us here, then leave us broken. But they forgot something. We learned how to fly. The Varn called it the Red Silence. The moment the skies above Earth went dark with their own burning ships, and from that silence came fire. One by one, salvaged Varn shuttles rose from Earth's surface, battered, jury-rigged, leaking atmosphere in places, but rising all the same. Not as escape pods, as weapons. Each one carried soldiers who had already died once, who had nothing left to lose and everything to burn. Carter Reeves sat inside one of the retrofitted drop shuttles, strapped into a stolen Varn seat, sweat clinging to his back beneath scavenged armor. The launch countdown blared in 3 different languages, none of them human. He looked across the cramped cabin, ex-special forces, hackers, ex-cons, teenagers with dead eyes and steady hands, all silent, all ready. He tightened the strap around his chest, felt the dull throb of broken ribs that hadn't quite healed. "First wave hits hard," he growled. "We're not here to win a fight. We're here to show them what happens when they start one." The engines flared, and the ship screamed skyward. Above, the Varn weren't prepared. They assumed Earth would defend. They didn't expect Earth to invade. The first boarding party slammed into a Varn battleship orbiting Jupiter's edge, detonating part of its hull before carving a hole into the command deck. They wore no standard armor. They didn't march in formation. They moved like ghosts. Fast, precise, relentless, Varn commandos fought back hard, but their own weapons had been reprogrammed. Their cameras fed false signals. And the humans, they kept coming. One Varn officer begged over comms. "They don't fall. They don't sleep. What are they?" The last thing he saw was a human dragging a plasma blade across the wall, carving 2 words into the metal. "Your turn." Back on Earth, Eileen Park monitored the fleet from the Arctic relay station. Snow howled outside as dozens of stolen Varn satellites beamed targeting data into deep space. She smiled grimly as a beacon locked onto a Varn fuel convoy near Saturn. "Happy hunting," she whispered, and fired the signal. Seconds later, a hyperspace mine detonated in the convoy's path, ripping 3 Varn cruisers in half. By week's end, Earth had done the unthinkable, invaded 4 Varn ships, sabotaged 2 forward bases, and taken a Varn moon colony. They didn't just take it, they freed it. There, the Varn had enslaved over 50 alien species, used for mining, breeding, and experimentation. They stared in disbelief as human soldiers arrived, not to conquer, but to rescue. And when the gates were opened and the chains fell and Carter Reeves stood tall above the crowd, those alien eyes saw it clearly. Humans were not what the Varn said they were. They were worse, because they fought for others too. Visuals: human shuttles painted in black ash and white bones streaking through space like daggers. Close-quarters combat on the hull of a Varn warship. Boots magnetized, rifles flashing, children on liberated moons touching Earth's flag for the first time, wide-eyed, shaking, a message sent through captured Varn channels repeating on every frequency, "You came here to rule. Now run!" Threx watched it all unfold from the dying bridge of the unbreakable law. His armor cracked, his pride shattered. His officers whispered the word they'd never used before in Dominion history: retreat! He wanted to speak, wanted to reclaim honor. But deep inside, he knew. This wasn't a war anymore. It was consequence. The Varn Dominion ruled for 10,000 years, but it only took one planet to make them bleed. And now the galaxy sees what we see. They're not gods. They're prey. The moons of Varn's outer colonies burned like torches across the star maps. One By one, resistance signals blinked to life. Languages never heard on Earth broadcasting a single phrase in broken English. Earth fights. So do we. The chain reaction was violent, beautiful, inevitable. It started in the slave pits of Corval, where insectoid laborers rose against their masters, using stolen Earth plasma tools as weapons, then in the gladiator arenas of Vel. Vokar, where a four-armed giant named Shun broke his chains mid-battle, raised a bloodied human flag, and screamed across the broadcast, "You taught me to kill. Earth taught me why." In the ruins of a shattered Varn temple on planet Drossos, Carter Reeves stood on a fractured dais, looking down at a crowd of liberated species, many still chained, still bleeding. He threw the Dominion's banner into the fire, turned to the aliens below, and said just one sentence, "It ends now." And from that moment, the fire spread faster than the Varn could contain it. Whole colonies rebelled, battleships turned on each other, lords assassinated by their own guards, and orbiting over it all, Earth's fleet, built from Varn wreckage and human fury, expanded by the hour. On the Varn capital world, Sithral Prime, Threx was forced into a role he'd never imagined, defensive command. The palace walls shook with explosions, alien banners hung in the streets. Not Varn ones. His elite guard, once proud, now fought terrified, and civilians screamed in panic as fire bloomed across their skyline. Threx stared into the tactical table, watching red markers vanish one after another. "What are we facing?" asked an officer. "Revenge," Threx growled, "and it knows our language now." Visuals. A line of Varn nobles kneeling in a burning square, surrounded by alien children holding scavenged rifles. An orbiting Varn cruiser detonated from the inside, sabotaged by its own enslaved cooks and janitors. A sky filled with fireworks over a liberated moon, each one a burst of red, white, and blue mixed with alien colors. A shaky broadcast of dozens of alien species raising Earth's flag together, stitched from rags and hope. Eileen Park watched the data flood in from the command relay above Saturn. She smiled grimly. Every broadcast we ever made, every scream they silenced, it's being replayed on their own networks. She turned to the AI, still running from salvaged Varn tech. "Begin Operation Wildfire." The system obeyed. In less than 12 seconds, 114 Varn communications hubs were overwritten with messages in every known language. "The Empire falls. You were never alone. Earth remembers. Now you do too." Meanwhile, on the battlefield of Threl 9, Carter stood beside Shuun, the massive gladiator who had once torn human soldiers apart for sport. Now he fought with them. The two stared at the burning Varn fortress ahead. "You sure this works?" Shun asked, gripping a salvaged alien rocket launcher. "No," Carter said. "But it's not about working. It's about making sure they feel it." They charged, side by side, and when the blast came, it lit the sky. In orbit above Varn homeworld, the human fleet awaited one command. They had the weapons, they had the coordinates, and for the first time, the galaxy was watching. Would Earth destroy them entirely? Would they become the next conquerors? The fleet held fire. Not because they lacked the will, but because humans had already won something deeper. They'd shattered the myth. They'd shown every world that even the most feared empire could fall. They didn't need to erase the Varn. They needed them to live in fear of Earth forever. The war was over, but the galaxy didn't breathe easy, because now Earth was watching. 1,000 systems once knelt before the Varn. Now they sat in silence, free, uncertain, and staring into the new void the humans had carved across the stars. No banners flew. No songs were sung. Not yet. Because every liberated world whispered the same question. What would the humans do now? Would they conquer? Would they rule? Or were they truly different from the monsters they destroyed? On Cithral Prime, the Varn homeworld, smoke still curled from the broken towers of the Dominion Palace. Carter Reeves stood at the center of what was once the throne chamber. The ornate obsidian pillars had collapsed. Varn flags burned in the gutters. A group of Varn elders knelt before him, heads lowered, awaiting a sentence they couldn't imagine surviving. Reeves didn't speak. He just looked up, at the galaxy, map engraved on the ceiling, now cracked through the Varn core system. He turned his back to them and walked out, his voice trailing behind him. It's not our galaxy to rule, but it's no longer yours to cage. He left them alive. Because fear lasts longer than fire. Visuals, a massive, multi-species assembly on the ruins of a Varn fortress, aliens of every shape and size, united not under a flag, but under shared freedom. Children from formerly enslaved, races lighting candles on a broken Varn war monument, turning it into a symbol of remembrance. Carter walking alone through the ruins, dragging the blade that once killed his brother, now melted down into a key, engraved with Earth's coordinates, an orbiting message satellite blinking a single repeated phrase into deep space. Never again. Back on Earth, the sky was calm. The first time in years. The orbital debris had cleared. The cities had rebuilt. Graves had been marked, thousands of them, some names known, many not. Eileen Park stood before a classroom of children, human and alien alike. She placed an old Varn helmet on the table. "Who knows what this is?" she asked. A small alien child, green-skinned, four-eyed, raised a hand. "They came to conquer," the child said quietly, "and Earth made them remember pain." Eileen nodded. "And what did Earth do when it won?" The child's eyes gleamed. "We stopped so others wouldn't start." Across the galaxy, stories spread, some true, some myths, but all terrifying. In their consistency, they said humans didn't fear death, that they burned their cities before letting them fall, that they turned their own skeletons into knives and their fallen friends into legends, that they didn't fight for planets, they fought for people. All people, and worst of all, for every tyrant still lurking in the shadows. They said this: Earth might come back. Threx, now exiled, watched from a distant rock world, drinking fungus wine and nursing scars that would never heal. He saw the news feeds. He heard the whispers, and he believed them. The Dominion had survived rebellions before, but not this, not Earth. "Why didn't we wipe them out before they reached the stars?" his advisor asked bitterly. Threx stared into the fire. "Because we forgot what humans were," he said. "They don't expand. They erupt. Like fire through dry grass. We didn't lose a war. We lit one. In the shadows of uncharted space, warlords gathered. Pirates, exiled emperors, broken syndicates, and none dared speak Earth's name directly. Instead, they gave it a title. The World That Reminds. Because when tyrants rise, Earth returns, not as rulers, not as kings, but as consequences.